I would like to bring up our keynote speaker for the day. I would like to give a brief introduction so that everyone understands why we have invited him here to speak with you all today. Our keynote today is Mr. Warren Anderson. Mr. Anderson is originally from Washington, D.C. However, he spent an interesting time during his college years in what he thought was going to be, I believe it was Los Angeles, because he thought everywhere in California was Los Angeles. I'll let him share with you some of the fun details that he learned when he ended up in the San Joaquin Valley instead of Los Angeles during the very turbulent late 60s. He had a very unique experience. He's also been kind enough to provide us with some of the newspaper articles and photographs and other details from his college years, especially when he was in California. He has since moved back to the DC area. He's been a pastor. He's also been a public speaker. He loves speaking with young people. So we thought this would be a perfect opportunity for him to come and share with you some of his life story today. And the theme for this really is storytellers. So we want him to just be able to share some of the details of his life with you. If at any point you have questions, I'm sure he would be more than happy to take them. And we will try to get those to him as easily as possible. So enough of me. Please welcome Mr. Warren Anderson.
I am delighted to be here today in Hagerstown Community College. I have fond memories of Hagerstown from my childhood. We used to come here for religious conventions every year, and so anytime I have the opportunity to come to Hagerstown, I come here with a smile on my face. I have a lot of titles that I've had in the past, but I've never had a title of a civil rights storyteller. So I'm thinking maybe I should pull out some nursery rhyme or Cinderella or something and tell a story. But I'm here today because I was invited to come to talk about my story as we celebrate this diversity event for Dr. Martin Luther King. And I really want to address young people. I want to talk to you specifically. Want to include the adults. But I want to speak to the young people specifically on this Martin Luther King celebration day. Dr. Martin Luther King was a majestic man, marvelous individual, world-renowned. And one day he gave a speech in 1963, and the speech was entitled, "I Have a Dream." It was probably the most majestic, soaring speech that's ever been given in the United States. It will go down in the annals of history as one of the most glorious speeches that any politician or civil rights leader has ever given. Martin Luther King had the distinct ability to make a Picasso out of words. He took words and drew a picture. And the picture was so big that it included all of us. One of the problems with the speech was it was so good that we enshrined it. And we almost got to the point that we would put it in our trophy case and look at it as though this was the end-all and be-all of everything when it comes to humanity and civil rights and diversity and people getting to know people. And it was so good that if you're not careful, it will intimidate us into believing that Martin Luther King's speech was the only speech and that he was the only one that had a dream. And I want to speak to you young people and say, before Martin Luther King was Martin Luther King, do you know who he was? Martin Luther King. Before he was the great paragon, he was literally a nobody. But one thing Martin Luther King did that I want to pass on to you, he took what he had and made something out of it. born poor, born on the wrong side of the tracks, born in segregation, born in a time where there were no cell phones, there were no Facebook, there was no Skype, born in a time when we couldn't even, black people couldn't even ride the bus. We had to stand up if a white person came and got on the bus. And I know this may sound strange to some of you young people, but if it was not for Rosa Parks, we would probably not even know who Martin Luther King was. Because it was Rosa Parks who, after working all day in the garment factory, and her feet were so tired, and she was sitting down, and the white policeman, bus driver, came back and said, "You've got to get up and let the white person sit down." She said, "I'm so tired. I can't get up." The whole civil rights movement, or a large part of the civil rights movement, was birthed. But it was not really a racial thing if you look at it. It was a dynamic movement that had to do with humanity. It was a movement that had to do with whites and blacks and Hispanics, fat and skinny, short and dark, becoming the best that we could be. And so out of that tragic situation with Rosa Parks came Martin Luther King. He was not born as one of the 1%. He was not born into a great, well-known family. He was not born into wealth. But there was something that set him apart from many of his peers, and that was he took what he had and made something out of it. And so many times there are so many of our young people that are waiting, saying, "I don't have anything to offer. I don't have a gift. I'm not smart." Hey, you're not the only one. I was not an A student. I would have gone to Harvard, but they don't let C students in Harvard. So I had to find a way to find my way. I often say, if you can't start where you want to start where you can start. Just get started. And so I identify with you here at Hagerstown Community College, because when I couldn't get into a 4-year school, that's what I decided. I was going to go to a community college. And so I had a good buddy of mine who was going to school in California. He said, "Hey, man, come on, let's go." And I was like many young black kids, wanted to be an NBA basketball player at 5'7". Give me a break. But I had basketball in my eyes, and he was a ball player. And so he talked me to come out to California. And being from the East Coast, I thought all of California was palm trees and movie stars. And so my mom and my dad took me to the airport, Dulles Airport. I'm 17 years old, mind you. I've only had one person in my family, which happened to be my mother, that graduated from college on either side of my family. My father was a laborer and a cab driver. So I did not come from any type of great wealth or any type of academic great achievement. But my father would always tell me, "Son, you're going to school to get a good government job." He didn't say government, he said government job. And so I was raised up to know that I had to go to school to get myself a good government job. So they took me to Dulles Airport, put me on the plane. I'm 17 years old, going to the land of movie stars and palm trees. Can't wait to get there. I take off, we get to L.A., I walk out into the lobby of L.A., and what do I see? Palm trees. I said, "Yes, I have arrived. I have arrived at the promised land." But I forgot to investigate Porterville. Porterville is not Los Angeles. Any town that ends with "ville," you may as well investigate it because you're in for a big surprise. So I was going to take another little short hop flight to Porterville from the airport in L.A., and when I got there, they had canceled the flight. I had to take a bus. It was late at night. I'm bone tired. I go to sleep. Wake up the next morning, one eye open, and I see cotton. Literally, I saw a whole bunch of folk out in the cotton field. I said, oh my God, they hijacked the bus to Mississippi. I not only saw cotton, but I smelled manure. There were cows, orange groves. I said, oh God, what have I done? I was like Fred Sanford, I'm coming home to meet you, Elizabeth. I'm coming home to meet you. And I got off the bus in this little one-horse town. And white folk were looking at me, and I was looking at them. It was obvious, you are not from around here. And they were absolutely right. The high school that I graduated from had about 800 graduates in the year I graduated. There were no whites. There were no white people in my church, in my neighborhood, in my school. Literally, when I left D.C., I did not know any white people. None. And I ended up in a little one-horse town full of white people. But this was my start. I want to say to some young person here, you've got to start somewhere. And if you can't start where you want to start, then start where you can start. Just get started. And because back there in 1967, when I was 17 years old, and this was before rap music, before black television. But during that time, there were no real black TV stars, no black shows. And I always thought that I was inferior. Because this is what was communicated to me all those years. And one of the things I found out, I told Dr. Chambers, I said, as soon as I got to Porterville, I started my classes. I realized real soon that white people weren't as smart as they thought I thought they were, and I wasn't as dumb as I thought I was. And one of the great realities that came to me very quickly was the fact that a lot of what we deal with is based on perception, not reality. Perception. I may not know you, but I know what I have heard about you. And until I get to know you, I can just make my decisions based on what I've heard and what I've seen on television. And that first year was pretty quiet. I went to classes, still a C student, and hung out, but it was weird because I'm a big city boy. And it was three of us there from D.C., and we were from big city, and we'd go to the school dances, and coming from D.C., we go to a dance, we want to hear the Temptations, not Willie Nelson. And we wanted to swing dance and bebop, and they was just, I said, what in the world? It's called culture shock. I don't know you, and you don't know me. And as that year went by, not much problem. And then the second year came around, and seemingly in the United States with the death of Martin Luther King, all hell broke loose. This was before most of you were born. It was not an easy time. Riots went from the East Coast to the West Coast. And the campuses and the universities were on fire because black people were demanding their rights. And I got caught up in the Black Power movement. My boys, Stanley Carter, was the president, and we said we want a black student union. And we're going to have a black student union. So he was the president. I was the vice president, the minister of information. I'm trying to be like Eldridge Cleaver of the Black Panther Party. And then Joe Green, who was number 3, he was just the bouncer. And we walked around campus with black tams and sunshades and black shirts and fatigues and black boots. And we would say, all power to the people and much power to the black people. And the campus said, oh my God. And we had planned out, and we're just kids, but we had planned out, we're going to have a black student union. We're going to have black classes and more black faculty. And so what we did, we got in the dorm room and Stan said, look, I'm the president, I'm going to go in the room. Now, Stan was from the wrong side of the tracks. He was the cussing brother of the group. I was raised in a religious family, so I was much more intellectual and erudite. So Stan said, I'm going to start it off. So Stan would go in there and begin to bam on the desk and we want our rights, and begin to cuss. And they stood there, shaking. And then he walked out of the room and slammed the door. This was all planned. I slid up to the front of the room and said, gentlemen, can we negotiate now? Joe Green sat back there and said, I don't know you. You don't know me. I've never been in your world. You've never been in mine. I don't know how you think. And you don't know how I think. But your thoughts are no better than my thoughts. And my thoughts are no better than yours. They're all just that. Thoughts. And so we went that whole year crusading about black power. We had speakers come down, and you'll see some up on the slides. We had speakers come down talking about black power, and they had a lot of Mexicans at that time on the campus, and we included them as much as we could. But the bottom line was we had to work out getting along. And getting along is not easy, particularly when it's people that you don't know. Sometimes it's people that we do know, like husbands and wives, and we still struggle. I should have got an amen for that one. I remember one time at the height of what we were doing, and we were walking around, as I said, in the black tams and the sunglasses, and we had our little Sherman Mile red books, and we were spouting off what Sherman Mile would say, and we were talking about revolution. Now, mind you, I'm only 18 years old talking about there's going to be a revolution. I can't even hardly spell revolution. And I was in class one day. We were in class and we were having this heated debate. And I said, the revolution is coming. The revolution is coming. And this one lady said, oh. She said, they're going to kill us. I said, yeah, we're going to kill all of y'all. And she said, ah. And I said to myself, I hope she didn't believe what I just said. I didn't know her, and she didn't know me. That year taught me a lesson that I had to bring to this life, my uniqueness. I found myself in that little one-horse town. I thought I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. And I never realized that I had an ability to communicate. I had an ability to convince people. I thought I didn't have anything to offer this life. And I want to say to you young people that you were not born into this world with nothing. You were not born into this world empty. When you arrived on the planet, you got here with something. You've got to find what it is and develop it. Every one of you are unique. Do you not know that there are close to 7 billion people on planet Earth? and not one of them has your fingerprints. Think about it. No matter where you go, no matter what continent, 7 billion people, and there's only one that has your fingerprints. And your value. Was that an amen? Or what? Your value is in your uniqueness. Don't downplay yourself. Don't measure yourself to the guy next to you. Be yourself. Be all that, it's like the military, be all that you can be. Don't look at yourself and say, I'm just broke down, I'm no good, I'm a nobody. You are somebody. I remember a number of years ago, I was driving an old jalopy car, and I had a truck driver friend of mine who was a good buddy, and I was saying, Ray, man, I'm driving this old raggedy car. I can't stand this car. He said, shut up. He said, take that car to the paint shop. Get a paint job. He said, take it and get some new tires. He said, take it and get some new cushions and some new upholstery. He said, it will no longer be an old jalopy. It is now a classic. He said, Warren, create a new reality. That which you thought was a piece of junk is really and worth more valuable than many of the new cars that come off the line. Martin Luther King had a dream. What's yours? What's your dream? I'm too old. No, you're not. I'm too short. No, you're not. I don't, my parents, no, you're not. No excuses. What is your dream? You were not just born to exist. You were born with the capacity and the ability to dream. And if every one of us takes our dreams and merges and meshes them together, what a wonderful world we could create. I don't know you. You don't know me. If I take just a small moment of time to say thank you, how are you? Who are you? I had a professor one day when the campuses were running over. He said, Warren, I want to see you. Took me into his office, Professor Kursarov, I'll never forget him. He looked at me, he was a white man. He looked at me and said, Warren, I see something in you. You're not like everybody else. It was just those few words that turned the tide of my life. One professor who I had never spoken to before calls me into his office and says, I see something. And it changed my life. Those of you that are older adults, you need to look around for a young person and tell them you see something. Don't let your wisdom die with you. Take the wisdom. All that gray hair you got on your head, you earned it. You earned all that gray hair. But that gray hair represents something. Experience, wisdom, knowledge that youth so desperately need. They may not want it, but they need it. You may not work the cell phone for them, but you can tell them what to talk when they get on it. You may, for a long time, I was so old-fashioned that I didn't want to text. I don't need to text. I've lived all my life without texting. I ain't got to text nobody. They want to talk to me, they'll call me. My wife would say, Warren, you got to come up to the times. And now you should see me now. Don't call me. I'll text you. I realized I could learn something new. Scary? Yes. Difficult? Yes. Gonna cause some inconvenience? Yes. Necessary? Yes. I want to close with a question. I'm not so interested right now in what Dr. King's dream was. We know that. The question is, what's yours? What is it that you see? What is it that you can do? What is your uniqueness that you can contribute to the welfare of this world? Thank you very much.